Did you know, for every iconic Nintendo character like Mario, Link or Donkey Kong, there's a Nintendo character that was lost to time, scrapped before they even had a chance to shine? In this video, we'll be talking about a few of the more interesting and eccentric lost Nintendo characters, some that were cut from a game that was actually released, and others that went down with a game that was cancelled entirely. The first character we're talking about is actually unique in that they fall somewhere between those two categories. We have previously talked about a game called Diddy Kong Pilot. This was a Game Boy Advance title that got scrapped when Rare was bought by Microsoft and was later revived and reworked into Banjo Pilot. The game was shown off in 2001, and several screenshots of the game were sent out to video games news outlets like IGN and GameSpot. One of those screenshots showed Diddy, DK, Cranky, Dixie, Crunch the Kremling, K. Rool, and this unnamed Kong member on the character select screen. The character seemed to embrace several cultural stereotypes of white farmers in the American South, which led to fans dubbing them Hillbilly Kong and even Bumpkin Kong. Obviously, Diddy Kong Pilot was scrapped and reworked into Banjo Pilot, which left all the characters in the original game on the cutting room floor. But fans were curious about this Kong. All the other Kongs had been in a released title, and since Microsoft purchased Rare, it was now unlikely they'd ever see him in an actual game. One curious fan was DK Vine's Chad McCanna, who wrote into Scribes, a section of the Rare website where staff would respond to fan letters. Chad asked about the cancelled Kong and what his actual name was. Rare gave an official response saying, "Don't worry about it. He's being killed off now anyway." Although this was a pretty disappointing reply, DK Vine's persistence would eventually pay off. Almost a decade later, the site managed to get in touch with a Rare employee who dropped some details about the elusive Kong. The developer, whose identity was kept a secret, told DK Vine the hillbilly was known as Redneck Kong, and was a very short-lived idea from the designer of the project, sometime during the time that screenshot was obviously captured. Although fans finally had his official name, Redneck Kong was seemingly never playable. Redneck had a fleeting existence and isn't playable in any of the game's builds that have leaked over the years. The character was replaced by Candy Kong in later versions of the game before it was canned. The next character we're talking about is also from the Donkey Kong universe. After the re-release of Donkey Kong Land on the Game Boy, some fans looked back through the game's pre-release media and noticed that a few elements shown off in magazines were absent from the final game. On DK Vine's forums, user MattDog1million posted an image from Nintendo Power showing what's likely a Kong helper character wearing a hat. MattDog said, "This guy was never given a name, but by the looks of him, I'd assume he'd be a Big Ape City resident, so I call him City Kong, unless you guys have another name for him." Since this post, fans have also named the character Hat Kong and Commuter Kong, and a whole bunch of other names. But there's been no official word on what the character's actual name was, or their function in the game, and unless someone at Rare spills the beans, it seems likely it'll stay that way. The following lost character doesn't have any art to illustrate them, but a simple description of them will likely conjure up vivid imagery in your mind's eye. When the original Mario Tennis was created for the Nintendo 64, the game's developers Camelot introduced a new character to complement Wario and mirror the partnership Mario has with Luigi. We're of course talking about Waluigi. But this isn't the only character that Camelot proposed to Nintendo. They also threw around the idea of expanding the motif of having an evil doppelganger to Peach, giving her a sort of Waru-Peachy counterpart that was akin to Wario and Waluigi. This information comes from Nintendo's own Japanese website, where Camelot staff talked about pitching the idea. One developer said it was absolutely not cute, and looked something like Wario in a dress. I don't know, sounds pretty cute to me. Unfortunately for the team, the pitch was shot down by Nintendo. It seems that in the final game, Princess Daisy was added so that Peach had someone similar to pair up with. Our next character goes all the way back to when the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time was still known as Zelda 64. This early version of the title was featured in several gaming magazines, showing off a Navulous Link and a few non-playable characters. One of those NPCs was a woman who never appeared in the final game. and according to one alleged Nintendo insider who spoke to the fansite Zelda Power, her name was Aria. Aria apparently served a similar purpose to Navi in the early game, giving players tips at various locations across Hyrule. It's also likely that her model was reused, and the various Aria models that Link spoke to were in fact completely different characters using the same assets. It's also believed she may have some connection to the Kuko lady in the final game, as both of their models have similarities in their dress. By some stroke of luck, Aria's model and animation data are still within the retail version of Ocarina of Time, where our sweet, beautiful Aria is simply labelled as Object Human. Fans tried to properly restore Aria's model for over a decade. Most attempts tried loading Aria's assets over adult Malon's actor data, since they appeared to be roughly the same shape. However, Aria's model is very archaic, and its associated data is actually closer to Mario 64's NPCs than models from Ocarina of Time. Most attempts to restore her were only partially successful, leading to distortions in the model and strange animations. It wasn't until November 2010 that Zelda hacker Spinout182 discovered how to load Aria's model and animations in the model viewer Z-Sartan. And this was further refined by Nicholas Vitale in 2011, who managed to get a fairly complete version of Aria working properly in-game. So, unless some earlier data from Zelda 64's development is found, this is probably about as close as we'll get to experiencing Aria from those early screenshots. Aria is followed up on our list by a character that went down with the game they starred in. M09 was a cyborg tasked with saving the world, and the protagonist of Project Hammer for the Nintendo Wii. M09 was created in 2050 when the Project Hammer experiment was conducted by an unknown scientist. Later in 2089, M09 was recovered and reactivated by a technician in order to help combat a global threat. The title was set in a future United States during a robot invasion, and players would use the Wiimote and Nunchuck to utilize M09 and his giant hammer. The game had a mission structure where players fight waves of robots building up to a boss battle at the end of each stage, similar to the Dynasty Warriors style games. Project Hammer was being developed by Nintendo Software Technology, or NST for short. Starting development in 2003, the game was finally shown off at E3 2006. Around the time of its reveal, many developers thought the game wasn't up to Nintendo standards. The US developers and Japanese management disagreed on how to improve the game, however, and the game wasn't shown publicly for several years. It was later reported that development resources had been shifted to other upcoming titles, and the game was cancelled in 2009 after Nintendo pulled its funding. For a brief time, the game was also being reworked into a title called Wii Crush, where M09 was seemingly cut from the equation and replaced with Mii characters. M09 at least got to show us what they could do in-game, but the next lost character wasn't so lucky. At Nintendo's 2013 E3 press conference, Shigeru Miyamoto took the stage and finally revealed Pikmin 3 for the Wii U. While the title's gameplay was being demoed, a piece of concept art popped up showing a cast of 4 characters. But the final game only had 3 characters in the landing crew, not 4. In the concept art, each character has a letter under their name. Alf has the letter A under him, Brittany has the letter B, Charlie has a letter C, and this unused character has a D under them. Since each letter corresponds to the first letter of the characters' names, it's thought that D may have had an actual name starting with D during development, but this was never revealed. Some fans have even speculated that D's name may have been Drake, and that when D was cut, some of his attributes were given to the talking ship, the SS Drake. But, as we've said, this is just speculation. It's also believed that D was cut because micromanaging 4 different characters at the same time was just too much for the player to handle, and the game was scaled back to having just 3 on your crew. The following character is another that got scrapped along with their game. Dorin the Dragon was the protagonist of Dragon Hopper, a Virtual Boy title being developed by Intelligent Systems and planned to be published by Nintendo. The game was shown off at Nintendo's Space World 1995 event, and later again at E3 1996, as well as in an issue of Nintendo Power. Dragon Hopper was an adventure title with a top-down perspective. It took place in a series of tower-like structures where Dorin leaps up or down to new platforms, with the Virtual Boy's 3D effect making the floors appear closer and further away. The game had light platforming and puzzle elements, and was reminiscent of A Link to the Past's multi-layered dungeons. The fan site Planet Virtual Boy sums up the game's story as such. Dorin, the Dragon Prince, lived a happy life in the magical kingdom of Celestia, until the king's power-hungry prime minister captured and jailed his family. The king, the queen, and Dorin's love, Diana. Pursued by soldiers, Dorin fled his home. As he ran away, he tripped and fell into a mysterious hole, landing in the land of Faerun. Now he has to get back to the surface and save Celestia. Despite Dragon Hopper apparently being finished, the game was never released due to the poor sales of the Virtual Boy system. Oh, what could have been.
When digging into the behind-the-scenes stories of Nintendo games, you will often find that the company has a habit of completely shifting directions when it suits them. Their notoriously high standards sometimes lead them to changing course in search of a better gaming experience. This video is devoted to those left turns, and the original visions abandoned by Nintendo projects along the way. There have been many examples of this over the years, but I'll be focusing on just a handful of these what-if scenarios, including some that have never previously been revealed. Despite the relatively small scale of the project, Animal Crossing's first mobile game could not avoid some fairly severe development issues. Initially announced in 2016, the company originally planned to bring Animal Crossing to mobile platforms before the end of that year. However, by September 2016 it was pushed back, and players were told to expect it by the end of March 2017. When the end of March rolled around, the game was still nowhere to be seen. No official description of it was given, nor any footage shown. Instead, it was unceremoniously delayed again during an investors briefing. It wasn't until 7 months later that the project finally stepped out of the shadows in October 2017, revealed as Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. This free-to-play slice of Animal Crossing attempted to tap into many of the series' traditional elements, like trading furniture and completing tasks for villagers. Although, had the game been allowed to release on its original schedule, fans would have seen a different take on the franchise. Throughout 2016, Nintendo had been working on a mobile title known internally as Animal Crossing Town Planner. Sources close to the project described it as a game in which players would build and manage their own towns from scratch. This included deciding where buildings and public work projects would go, along with some light elements of economy management. Players could visit the towns of friends, comparing and trading items with them over the internet. After being under development for the best part of a year, the game was seen as falling short of the quality standards set by Nintendo. It was deemed too bare bones and simplistic, sending its developers back to the drawing board. Almost all of the work done on this first iteration was tossed out, and the project would begin anew, eventually evolving into Animal Crossing Pocket Camp. Originating as a recurring character in 3D Mario games, Captain Toad eventually received his own spin-off in the form of Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker. It tasked players with guiding its titular hero, an adventurous Toad in safari garb, to collect the treasure hidden in each world. Weighed down by his backpack, Captain Toad is unable to jump, and instead relies on items, power-ups, and moving platforms. These stages first made an appearance in Super Mario 3D World, dubbed The Adventures of Captain Toad. Back before even that, however, they were originally envisioned as being their own separate game, a game that had nothing to do with either Captain Toad or Mario. Towards the start of the Wii U's life cycle, Shinya Hirataki, a planner at Nintendo, had devised an idea for a new game where players would navigate diorama-like environments. They would move the camera to rotate the diorama world suspended in the air, revealing clues and secret areas by observing it from different angles. Hirataki had been mostly involved with the Mario series at this point in his career, but reasoned that a Mario character might not be a suitable protagonist for this kind of game. This was because he intended for the hero hero in his game to be unable to jump. Looking to Nintendo's other franchises, Link from The Legend of Zelda was soon thought to be a good fit for the project, given that he traditionally did not jump in his games. Hirataki led a small team of developers at Nintendo to create a tech demo for the project, and soon found himself demoing it to a board of Nintendo executives. According to a Game Informer interview on this subject from 2014, there was a misunderstanding regarding the concept between the developers and Nintendo designer Shigeru Miyamoto. "We must have done too good of a job with our demo," said Hirataki, because during our presentation, Mr. Miyamoto asked us how we were planning on bringing these dioramas into production. He thought we were pitching him an actual physical product design. Despite some apparent enthusiasm on the part of Miyamoto, the idea of using the Legend of Zelda property was shot down, and the project did not move forward. Instead, at a later date, Miyamoto suggested implementing the concept into the next Mario game in development, Super Mario 3D World. As discussions continued, Hirataki recalled an Explorer Toad character from the Mario Galaxy games, and reasoned that the backpack he wore would weigh him down, making him unable to jump. With this realization, the protagonist of these side levels, and ultimately a new game, was found. Project Hammer was the codename of a first-party Nintendo brawler being developed at US game studio Nintendo Software Technology. This infamous case study in game development gone awry was first revealed at E3 2006 as Nintendo laid out their lineup for the launch of the Wii. At this point, Project Hammer was presented as a game making full use of the Wii's motion controls. Official PR images showed players swinging the controller to mimic flailing a giant hammer. This may have led some to believe that the Wii Remote had always been at the heart of the game's premise, but this is not so. In fact, the original concept behind this project had nothing to do with the Wii. The initial proposal for the game that would evolve into Project Hammer dates back to late 2003. Upon completing 1080 Avalanche for the GameCube, a team at Nintendo Software Tech was tasked with planning out their next big game. It didn't take long before a rough direction was settled on. They would be tackling the hack and slash genre. This was decided after the observation had been made by the development team that Nintendo lacked such a game in their first-party portfolio. Third-party support for this genre on Nintendo systems was sparse as well. While games like Dynasty Warriors were making their way to PlayStation and Xbox around this time, Nintendo's struggling GameCube was going without. Looking to Dynasty Warriors in particular, NST hoped to craft an original first-party hack and slash exclusively for the GameCube using a similar style of gameplay. The developers even took it as far as referring to it as a Dynasty Warriors for the West in meetings. Upon gaining Nintendo's approval, full development was underway in 2004. The game was expected to release sometime in the twilight years of the GameCube due to the console's lackluster sales performance and the expectation that Nintendo would move on to its successor before long. Although what exactly this new machine would be was a closely guarded secret at Nintendo's Japanese headquarters. Nintendo Software Technology, despite being a key studio of theirs at the time, had zero insight into what this system would be like. Former developers from this hack and slash project say at the time they expected their new game could come to this new platform. They imagined that if Nintendo planned to move existing GameCube projects to this new console, porting their game would be a fairly straightforward task. They had no idea, however, that this new hardware, codenamed Revolution, would be radically different from its predecessor. It sported a completely different controller interface featuring an infrared pointer and motion sensors. To make matters worse, the developers only learned of this when Nintendo president Satoru Iwata took to the stage at Tokyo Game Show 2005 and revealed it to the press. Audiences around the world reacted with surprise, but few were as shocked as NST developers, who now face the prospect of having to entirely rework their game with no prior warning. Over the following year, it changed, adopting a focus on the Wii's motion controls and becoming Project Hammer. The game's original concept was iterated upon and was never glimpsed by the public. Between interviews and a comprehensive GDC presentation, the history of Splatoon is fairly well documented. Its creators have divulged many of the ideas left on the cutting room floor on their way to making an original shooter IP about transforming squids. Before the project had found this identity, the developers had considered various other possibilities for their main characters, including anthropomorphic rabbits. One of the more notable concepts tried out involved the Mario series. At an early stage in development, Nintendo explored the idea of setting it in the Mario universe and including characters like Yoshi. Both Mario himself and various colours of Yoshi were tested as playable characters, wielding the same style of ink guns later featured in the final game. It employed the same basic turf war style of gameplay, where the team who have covered the most ground with ink wins. The Mario characters concept was ultimately short-lived. The team arrived at the conclusion that creating their own characters from scratch would allow them to have something more fit for purpose. In using the Mario IP, they observed a disconnect between the gameplay and its characters. There was no easily ascertainable reason for why they would be spreading ink or competing in a game of this style. By using squids, as they later supposed, it would make more sense to players why these characters would be spraying ink and swimming through it. Regardless, Nintendo continued to flirt with the idea of using Mario assets in Splatoon after the conception of the Inklings. They created a test level based upon the first level from Super Mario 3D World, Super Bell Hill. The next project on our list underwent not just one but two significant transformations on its long journey to being finished. Tokyo Mirage Session Sharp FE was an Atlus-developed RPG for the Wii U. The game was a crossover between the Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem franchises that was originally announced under the simple name of Shin Megami Tensei Cross Fire Emblem. This collaboration was the brainchild of Nintendo producer Kaori Ando, who revealed in an interview with Nintendo Dream that it was not in fact the first crossover title she had attempted. Ando, who was working primarily on Pokemon spin-offs around this time, realized the potential of mixing the rules of the Pokemon RPGs with those of the Fire Emblem series. This led her to submitting a proposal for a Nintendo DS crossover game combining the two in mid-2010. These plans were quickly shot down by Nintendo executives because they were already planning a Pokemon tactical RPG named Pokemon Conquest, also for the DS. By coincidence, the pitch for this project had only recently been approved. Ando's proposal was deemed too similar to it. Still intrigued by the prospect of a Fire Emblem spin-off, she soon devised another pitch just days later, now proposing a crossover with the Shin Megami Tensei franchise. Nintendo greenlit the idea, and the company tabled a meeting with Atlus, the company behind Shin Megami Tensei. At an early stage in development, the concept at the heart of Shin Megami Tensei Cross Fire Emblem was far removed from the game it would eventually grow into. When it was first announced in January 2013, it was being envisioned as a grid-based strategy RPG in the vein of past Fire Emblem titles. However, as full-scale production was set to ramp up, it was decided that Atlus would take up the reins and assume full development duties themselves. Previously, they had been shared jointly between them and Nintendo during pre-production. It was for this reason that much of what had already been mapped out was scrapped. Since Nintendo's Intelligent Systems, the developers behind Fire Emblem, would not be handling the project, the two parties agreed that Atlus should make the game in a style that would play upon their strengths. Therefore, its direction shifted away from a Fire Emblem-esque experience and more towards a traditional RPG. The reworking pushed the project's schedule back on multiple occasions before it was eventually finished at the end of 2015. Aura Climber is a platformer that was developed by Nintendo Software Technology for the DSiWare platform. The game follows a fallen star named Aura trying to make his way back into the sky. Players zip between grapple points to gradually progress upwards, gaining power-ups and items along the way. Produced by Kensuke Tanabe of Metroid Prime fame, Aura was the first new IP that NST had made in years after a number of non-starters. Although, had Nintendo gone with another plan they had considered for the game, it would have been linked to an existing franchise. According to Nintendo's sources, a group of senior staff overseeing the game in Japan were unsure about its viability as an original IP. Their suggestion, made midway into development, was to replace Aura with Yoshi and turn it into a new spin-off game of some kind. Yoshi's tongue would have been used to propel him towards different platforms in a game using essentially the same mechanics. The concept was received unenthusiastically among staff making the game, say former developers, who had previously enjoyed the creative freedom the project had brought. After some back and forth, the idea of transforming it into a Yoshi game was brought to an end by Nintendo president Satoru Iwata himself. Wanting to respect the developer's wishes and have the project finished on time, Aurora Climber was allowed to stay true to its original vision. It was released in February 2010 to positive reviews. After years of shooting down hopeful game revivals and allegedly laughing buyout offers out of the room, Nintendo's management has earned itself a reputation for being discerning and difficult to pitch to. In many instances, this approach has served the company well, but every so often, they have been known to unwittingly let a big business opportunity slip through their fingertips. In this video, I'll be going over several case studies of such a phenomenon. These are some of the big games that Nintendo turned down. 2008 was a year of great instability for the game industry. Rocked by the global financial crisis, many companies were forced to close their doors for good. Toys for Bob, meanwhile, was challenging themselves to invent a new IP during a period when the stakes were higher than ever. Their experiments combining RFID chips with homemade action figures resulted in a prototype that caught the attention of Activision's executives. They blended this original property with one Activision had not long since acquired, Spyro, resulting in the first Skylanders game. The majority of Activision's executives were apparently bullish on the proposed new title, but still sought to offset as much risk as possible. They directed Toys for Bob to court Nintendo for a potential co-publishing arrangement to spread the costs and employ their expertise. Believing it had the potential to succeed on their platform, the Wii, Activision wanted to offer Nintendo a chance to get in on the ground floor of their new product. After all, the two publishers already had a strong working relationship with a co-marketing deal already in place for the Wii generation. Paul Ritchie and other Toys for Bob staff presented their ideas to Nintendo of America in 2008, who were apparently impressed by the demonstration. Despite this enthusiasm, a risk-averse Nintendo declined to invest in this unproven new IP. The deal would have offered Nintendo a percentage in a venture that would go on to become highly profitable for Activision, spawning numerous sequels and topping over $3 billion in revenue. Skylanders helped spawn a toys-to-life craze throughout the 2010s that ultimately fizzled out in 2016. As sales slumped year on year, Activision cancelled its next major installment. Speaking to Polygon in 2014, Ritchie recalled his incredulity at Nintendo's decision. Clearly they have got properties well suited to this world. Why it is that they didn't rush in here will probably haunt them for the rest of their days. As the success of Skylanders exploded, Nintendo eventually did backtrack on their decision, at least to an extent. The two companies partnered for the Wii U version of Skylanders Superchargers, which introduced guest playable characters Hammer Slam Bowser and Turbocharged Donkey Kong. Both had their own Skylanders figures, which could also function as amiibo. For years, Sega's Yakuza series was associated chiefly with Sony platforms, beginning on PS2 and landing exclusively on them for a number of years. But as series creator Toshihiro Nagoshi has explained, this was not for lack of trying. After finally receiving the green light from Sega following multiple failed attempts, the team found themselves presenting their concept to console manufacturers, including Nintendo. The game was proposed to Nintendo, which was led by Satoru Iwata at the time, as a possible title for the GameCube. According to Nagoshi, however, Nintendo staff didn't see the potential in his game, along with every other platform holder. Even Sony turned down the initial proposal for Yakuza, as Nagoshi explained in an interview with CVG. For the market at the time, they thought it was too niche, they were worried it wouldn't sell, and I got quite a disappointing reply from them. But I kept pestering them, and eventually they gave it a closer look. That's because they saw the passion I had for the game, rather than anything to do with whether or not it would sell. Ultimately, the Yakuza series did make its debut on Nintendo hardware years later, albeit in a limited form. The first two games were re-released together in HD on the Wii U, exclusively in Japan. This release, which was labelled by Nagoshi as an experiment to gauge the level of interest among Wii U players in the series, performed poorly. It was believed to have sold fewer than 2,000 copies during its first week on the market, leading the director to brand it as a huge failure in 2018. As the skateboarding game genre dawned in the 1990s, a number number of different companies found themselves attempting to figure out how to best translate the burgeoning sport into video game form. For many publishers at the time, however, a skateboarding game remained a hard sell. To help grease the wheels, skating icon Tony Hawk was brought on to lend some credibility to the endeavour. Partnering with a PC developer in the late 90s, this very early concept for a skating game with the names of real-life pro skaters attached was pitched around to a variety of Western publishers. As Tony Hawk himself revealed in the 2020 documentary Pretending I'm a Superman, the Tony Hawk video game story, these initial endeavours were met with universal skepticism. Publishers were hesitant about the prospects of a skateboarding game, believing the sport to be unpopular and therefore unlikely to be the basis of a successful video game. While these unsolicited pitches went nowhere, there was one company that did take a proactive interest in Tony Hawk's early efforts and invited him to present a proposal: Nintendo. The Japanese game giant had caught wind of the project they'd been seeking to produce and met with him to see if it had potential as a Nintendo exclusive. As Hawk recounted, their ideas didn't get far and were unceremoniously shot down by their higher-ups, who ended up being similarly concerned about its sales potential. It was shortly after this venture fizzled out that he was contacted by a different party entirely, Activision. They had contracted the Californian studio Neversoft to create a prototype for a skating game. Upon playing the demo himself, Tony Hawk's impressions were very positive, complimenting its intuitive and approachable gameplay. He soon agreed to come on board as the face of the game. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater released in 1999 to widespread acclaim and commercial success. It would go on to receive a myriad of sequels, raking in over $1.4 billion in revenue as of 2019. E3 2011 saw the reveal of the Nintendo Wii U, a first showing that also announced an infamously ill-fated collaboration. EA's John Riccitiello took to the stage to pledge his company's support for Nintendo's system in no uncertain terms. The CEO bigged up their arrangement as an unprecedented partnership and told players to imagine a variety of EA franchises on the new console at their very best. Ultimately though, it was in the imaginations of Nintendo players that some of these games would remain. In spite of Peter Moore's insistence later that year that his company believed in the Wii U and its apparently extensive online features, EA's support for the system was limited to only 4 games, all of which were ports from other systems. The apparent turnaround from unprecedented partnership to a small series of ports that were commonly criticised for missing features has led many players to speculate that there was a fallout between the two parties after that initial 2011 announcement. While the dramatics of these events may have been overstated, there is some truth to the rumours after all. Sources close to the talks indicate that there were fundamental disagreements about the direction of the Wii U between EA and Nintendo. These concerned its online infrastructure, which EA apparently wanted to have a bigger hand in, and how powerful the system should be. One EA developer had asserted that the company was looking for a bigger piece of the pie when it came to the Wii U's online, and had even pushed for it to implement their EA Origin service in some form. Despite having initiated the discussions themselves, Nintendo was not willing to agree to some of EA's terms. For one, Nintendo hoped to keep manufacturing costs down, and this meant less powerful hardware than was initially discussed, an apparent point of contention for EA. Inside sources described the outcome as an amicable disagreement that left EA steadily backing off from some of their previous commitments out of concern for how successful the Wii U would be. In the aftermath of discussions breaking down, a number of potential EA games for the Wii U ended up being scrapped. Among those prototyped was a gamepad-centric version of SimCity and Crysis 3. One of the last nails in the coffin for EA support on the console came after attempts to get their Frostbite 2 engine running on it yielded some apparently poor results. titles using the engine subsequently never appeared on the platform. These hiccups notwithstanding, Nintendo and EA are said to have entered talks again at the end of that generation in 2016 as the Nintendo Switch loomed. This time around, EA sought more reassurance that Nintendo would do more to court their typical audience on the console through its first-party efforts. Sources privy to the negotiations said that EA wanted to have a hand in hardware sales yet again, proposing a FIFA Switch bundle be sold with their title packaged in. Nintendo turned them down once again, limiting their initial commitment to the system. Nintendo and Platinum Games have over the years cultivated a strong working relationship, beginning with their partnership over games like The Wonderful 101. However, there have also been a number of titles that Platinum was unable to receive the green light on when pitching to them. One notable title to slip through the cracks, according to former Platinum developers, was their fantasy action RPG epic, Scalebound. Sources claim that the title was pitched around to a variety of different publishers, and this included Nintendo themselves early on in its lifespan. Already engaged in development on multiple other games with Platinum, Nintendo staff simply weren't interested in the initial concept and politely turned it down. Instead, it would end up being Microsoft who picked up the game, looking to produce more Japanese games for their then upcoming system, the Xbox One. Following several rocky years of development, the ambitious project fell apart in late 2016 amid tensions between the two companies. Platinum would instead continue to partner with Nintendo on successful titles such as 2019's Astral Chain. Delivering one quirky invention after the other, Japanese game giant Nintendo has cemented its reputation in the industry for out-of-the-box thinking, and while success hasn't always resulted from it, this ethos has often carried over to its marketing. For this video, I'll be recalling some of the unconventional lengths the company has gone to in order to expose their products to a wider audience. These are some of the less remembered and more unusual marketing stunts of Nintendo's past. We begin in 2002, the year of the GameCube's launch in PAL regions. While the console was finding success in the US throughout its first months on the market, it was struggling to find its footing elsewhere. Ahead of its UK release, Nintendo revised its sales forecasts for the region downwards in a preemptive reaction to low pre-order numbers. Just 2 weeks ahead of the Cube's street date, they even shaved £20 off its original price to sweeten the deal. Ultimately, the launch failed to set the UK on fire, and Nintendo found itself plotting out new and experimental ways to capture more of the market. As the October 2002 release of notable exclusive Super Mario Sunshine neared, a plan was hatched involving a celebrity sponsorship and hair dye. For this endeavour, the marketing team at Nintendo UK enlisted the help of British television presenter Des Lynam. In reference to the GameCube's purple exterior, Lynam dyed his moustache a bright purple to mark the release of Mario's latest adventure. He was pictured posing with two models and a Mario mascot when this deal was announced, and later appeared prominently on billboards throughout London. "I'm pleased that the true worth of my moustache has finally been realised," Lynam said to the press. "It's something I've worn proudly for years despite what fashions have come and gone. I consider Mario a long-serving brother-in-arms, and long may we both wear our fine facial hair with pride." Andy Williams, a spokesperson from Nintendo UK, added, "I can only hope the purple comes out of Dez's moustache, and that he doesn't become addicted to playing Super Mario Sunshine at the expense of the sporting world as a result of this." The stunt, which lasted through the month of Sunshine's release, cost the company at least £100,000, according to The Guardian. The game later attained relative success around the world, but failed to live up to Nintendo's original hopes.
High-quality games like Mario Sunshine and Metroid Prime did not fully meet our expectations.
Another more successful device that the gaming hardware titan was pushing around this time was the Game Boy Advance. In a bid to gain further publicity for the system, Nintendo found itself entering the world of extreme sports. They began sponsoring competitive events in the early 2000s, including the 2001 Wakeboarding World Championships. Their attempt to tap into this market was taken to the next level in 2002. Nintendo started sponsoring a number of extreme sports athletes from the UK. This assembly of daredevils became known as the Game Boy Advance Extreme Team. Among them were championship winners from various different sports, including wakeboarder Dan Knott and snowboarder Melanie Leando. Each donned Game Boy Advance branded gear at events throughout the year and were profiled on their favourite GBA titles. This promotion attracted little attention from the gaming press of the era, but was notable for facilitating some record-breaking stunts. One member of the GBA Extreme team, Kirsty Jones, became the first person to successfully kitesurf across the Irish Sea in September 2002. Nintendo's pattern of unusual GameCube promos also encompassed a series of quote-unquote immersive advertisements for Pikmin. Looking to get the word out about Miyamoto's latest creation, Nintendo's international branches opted for some real-world marketing gimmicks, starting with Nintendo of America. On the 12th of December 2001, NOA announced the sale of a flower dubbed the Pikmin flower, which would later be sold throughout North America in 2002. Made possible through a partnership with Syngenta, the Pikmin flower sported 5 white petals, intended to resemble the buds that bloom on the heads of Pikmin. Nintendo UK, on the other hand, went about organising a series of real-life performance pieces. A troupe of actors was paid to visit public places around England, dressed as different colours of Pikmin. These costumes included face paint and Pikmin onesies. They could be seen following around unsuspecting members of the public in cities such as London and Liverpool, mimicking their behaviour from the video game. They later attended game retail stores on the day of the title's launch, and even brought a potted Pikmin flower to show shoppers. The company took its trend of creative marketing stunts even further with a large competition to promote GameCube exclusive Eternal Darkness: Sanity's Requiem. Nintendo encouraged amateur filmmakers from around the world to get involved and create a short psychological horror film of their own to compete. Fans were instructed to invoke the game's themes of hallucination, insanity, and black magic. The victor would receive a cash prize of $20,000 and have their film featured at a major film festival. A panel of judges was assembled to choose their favourites, which included Donnie Darko director Richard Kelly and Dennis Diak, the then president of Eternal Darkness developer Silicon Knights. The top entries were originally hosted on a Nintendo-owned website named EternalDarknessFilms.com and have since been uploaded to YouTube. These included Rewind, a film about a haunted video rental store, and Dinner with Kip, which followed a paranoid woman being driven insane by her boyfriend. However, it was a movie named Unloved that was crowned the winner. This short story centered around a mad scientist who puppeteers a woman's corpse as his lover. It was made by Patrick Daughters, who went on to become a noted music video director. The competition was held in association with media production company Hypnotic, which later purchased the rights to an Eternal Darkness movie that ultimately fizzled out in pre-production. Later into the lifespan of the console, Nintendo of America arrived at the idea of helping out those in need while promoting one of their landmark titles. Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door made its debut in 2004, and their marketing department chose to make a charitable donation inspired by its title. The company partnered with Habitat for Humanity, a non-profit dedicated to tackling homelessness and poverty around the world. Nintendo aided its housing projects in Florida by donating 1,000 doors in honor of the new Paper Mario. A photo op for the event was captured by NGC magazine in November 2004, which saw a Mario mascot helping hold up a door being fitted by workers. George Harrison, Nintendo of America's then Senior Vice President of Marketing, commented on the event, "We trust this contribution will open the door for hundreds of families to enjoy a better life." These endeavours followed in the footsteps of other quirky promotions for the series, such as this print ad from 2001, showing a version of the titular character that could be cut out, jokingly labelled Free Demo. The Thousand Year Door attempted something similar when another print ad was produced with instructions on how to fold it up into a paper airplane, a reference to the plane Mario ability from the game. That same year, another wordplay-filled series of stunts was employed for rhythm beat game Donkey Konga. In statements to the press, Nintendo talked up an advertising campaign which they playfully referred to as guerrilla marketing. This kicked off in July 2004 with a Donkey Kong mascot wandering about London Zoo to announce a UK tour called Donkey Kong's Beach Road Trip. For the following several months, Nintendo UK toured major cities up and down England in a large beach-themed truck filled with GameCube kiosks. Visitors could try out Donkey Konga ahead of its UK release, or a number of other impending titles such as Animal Crossing. The tour vehicle brought with it a pop-up beach bar and a number of Nintendo-themed carnival attractions. These included Pikmin Slingshot, in which players had to catapult plush Pikmin through basketball hoops. Inflatable Pokemon decorated the surrounding area. Attendees could also apply to star in a wacky live-action TV spot for Donkey Konga at these events. The chosen applicants competed in a 4-player versus match shot in a high-energy game show setting. The resulting ad ran alongside UK airings of the Japanese game show Takeshi's Castle throughout 2004. The simian-centric media blitz came to a head on a rainy October afternoon in London. 50 actors in gorilla costumes loudly invaded Trafalgar Square, brandishing Donkey Konga branded bongos and holding up placards which read, "Do the Konga." 2005 saw the release of Nintendo's hit pet simulator, Nintendogs. The game had long legs financially, receiving numerous marketing pushes. This all started with some innovative digital hooks and live events. In September 2005, New York City's Nintendo World Store marked the game's release with a launch day party. Producer Shigeru Miyamoto was on hand to meet the first 200 fans in line and sign their copies of the game. His appearance was advertised online ahead of the event, leading to over 1,500 excited fans lining the street in anticipation, with some camping out several days in advance. While not everyone was able to meet the famed designer, every person buying the new game was able to get in on a celebrity cameo of another kind. Through Bark Mode, a feature in Nintendogs using the system's wireless communications, they could unlock the game's Jack Russell Terrier breed, a digital bonus that was initially exclusive to this event. In addition to this, they could download Bentley, the Nintendog of Napoleon Dynamite star Haley Duff. The pup brought with it a pair of sunglasses and a voice clip from the actor herself.
Hi, I'm Haley Duff. My Nintendog Bentley has a special gift for you. Have fun playing Nintendog.
This downloadable was later made available at GameStop for a limited time. The two companies together also made a charitable donation of $50,000 to the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals in the game's honor. Across the pond, Nintendo UK partnered with retailer HMV for a historic launch party in London. For the first time in the store's history, dogs were not only allowed to enter, but owners were actively encouraged to bring them along. Dog owners received a Nintendogs goodie bag for their participation and could meet a real-life stand-in for HMV's mascot, Nipper the dog. Several days later, the launch was followed up by an event known as the Puppy Party, a Nintendogs-themed celebration hosted by celebrity wildlife enthusiast Bill Oddie. Also in attendance were then famous British canines such as Schmeichel from UK TV soap Coronation Street. Looking to further expand upon its vast marketing efforts for the DS, it was in 2006 that Nintendo set its sights on Hollywood. Through a partnership with the Weinstein Company, the DS and its games became prominently featured in the 2006 spy movie Stormbreaker, an adaptation of the Anthony Horowitz novel of the same name. The modified Hot Rod Red DS is used throughout the movie by its protagonist Alex Rider, a teenage spy. The device is introduced to him by Smithers, portrayed by Stephen Fry, who reveals its various functions. By inserting different DS cartridges, Alex is able to access different espionage tools, including an application for eavesdropping on conversations remotely. Also featured in the scene are several background product placements for DS games like WarioWare Touched, and this Nintendo-themed gag.
This one here turns it into a bug finder, and sonic intensifier means you can hear conversations through solid walls for up to 250 yards. This one turns the whole device into a smoke bomb. has a 5-second delay.
That's really cool. And what about Mario Kart?
Mario Kart is a game. We thought you might like it for the flight.
The gadget is used numerous times throughout the film, before being ultimately discarded by the main character, who uses it to stun armed guards with its smokescreen ability. Months into the lifespan of Nintendo's Wii U, the company dropped Game & Wario, a party title spin-off featuring Mario's flatulent foe, Wario. The game failed to shift the needle for Nintendo's struggling console and did itself financially underperform. Despite this, the company did manage to garner praise from various outlets for its unique marketing approach. Mocking the burgeoning trend of video game developers crowdfunding their games via Kickstarter, it was in May 2013 that Nintendo made their own parody site called Crowdfather. It was launched by a trailer voiced by Charles Martinet himself, in which Wario appeals to fans to support his new game on Crowdfather.
Just give me your money so I can make my dreams come true. Thank you very much.
As opposed to donating money to the site, people were encouraged to spread the word on social media and tweet #Crowdfather. In return, they gradually unlocked community rewards for their participation. These included digital bonuses like wallpaper, a ringtone of Wario farting, and eventually a new trailer for Game & Wario. Just over 8,200 tweets were posted in support for the game overall, and the Crowdfather was marked as fully funded when the game launched in June 2013. Since their entry into the industry, Nintendo has managed to move hundreds of millions of video game consoles. Despite the occasional financial misstep along the way, they have remained a household name from NES to Switch. But for each new machine, there exist versions that come to be owned by only a few. Rare, officially licensed console variants are an inevitability with each generation of Nintendo systems, and it has inspired an underground world of private collectors that track them closely. One of the biggest names in this community is Console Variations, a site that archives the history of rare gaming hardware. For this edition of Game History Secrets, I've joined forces with them to share a look at some of the rarest Nintendo consoles on the planet, and the stories behind them. For our first case study, we're taking a look at an extremely rare piece from Europe. Endzone is an officially licensed Nintendo magazine that has been sold in Germany since 1997 at the height of the Nintendo 64. As gaming magazines often do, it has held many competitions in its time, and in 2005 it held a series of giveaways that piqued the interest of European collectors. For this event, Nintendo produced a series of rare systems with unique colour schemes and decals corresponding to recent first-party titles. They were planned to be given away in celebration of Endzone's 10th anniversary. The most elusive of these custom gadgets was a blue Nintendo DS with Super Mario 64 DS art printed on it. It featured a render of Mario swimming underwater with bubbles surrounding him, spreading from the front of the device into its interior. While the other consoles in the promotion are believed to have found their way to readers of the magazine, the Mario 64 DS inexplicably disappeared off the map for years to come. Enthusiasts were unable to pinpoint its location until Console Variations reached out to former staff from the magazine. According to these sources, the Endzone competition for the Mario handheld never moved forward. It was cancelled due to internal politics at the company. However, the pictures printed in the magazine were no mere mock-ups. Nintendo had produced the consoles and delivered them to the publication. The Mario DS fell into the hands of an employee who held onto it for well over a decade before passing it on to Console Variations in 2019. Still in very good condition today, it is considered extremely rare, with only one of them having ever been made. In 2020, the site placed its value at around $3,000. Japan's largest airline, All Nippon Airways, has a well-established history of partnering with Nintendo and the Pokemon Company dating back to the 1990s. They have, for instance, had a number of ANA jets themed with Pokemon from various generations. The collaboration reached its apex in 1999 when passengers aboard these planes were given the chance to take home some Nintendo goodies. Each seat was entered into a raffle at the start of each journey, and a random seat number would be called out as the winner. A prize often given out during these events was a special charcoal colour Nintendo 64 with the ANA logo printed on it. These were given away alongside copies of Hey You Pikachu and Pokemon Stadium. It's estimated by console variations that around just 2,000 of the ANA Nintendo 64s were ever given away, meaning they are considered very rare today. The consoles have been known to crop up on sites like eBay, although it is much harder to come by them complete in their original shipping boxes. The collection, when presented in its original shipping container, is valued by console variations at around $4,000. Nintendo has, over the years, made a habit of sending games media outlets unique merchandise to promote their upcoming titles. This practice has led to some hotly sought after items. Their inherent rarity and the allure of them not being available to the public drives fans to drop hundreds of dollars to add them to their collections. One such example is the special edition Advance Wars DS made to advertise Advance Wars Dual Strike in 2005. Only 50 of these press kits were sent out in total, and they were made available exclusively to press in Europe. The assortment of rare merch came in a repurposed army ammunition box. Inside was a custom camouflaged Nintendo DS, a copy of Advance Wars Dual Strike, and a mug emblazoned with the game's logo. Console variations places the collection somewhere between $750 to $1,000. In 2010, Nintendo made headlines with yet another big collaboration. The company partnered with fast food giant McDonald's to produce a line of McDonald's branded DSi units. These devices were made available exclusively to branches of McDonald's in Japan, whose employees used them for training purposes. The black DSis, donning the McDonald's M, came with unique DS cartridges containing training software. Two varieties of McDonald's training software were offered, one for helping get franchise newcomers to grips with the workings of the restaurant, and another to aid existing workers. The programs were intended to teach everything from workplace sanitation to food preparation, and the two cartridges even came in their own DS game boxes, complete with instruction manuals. This attempt to capitalize upon the massive success of the handheld is said to have cost McDonald's around $2.2 million. Several years later, this program was gradually phased out of stores, and the devices made their way into the hands of collectors. A decade on, the McDonald's DSi is considered very rare and highly valuable. The few that have cropped up online typically bear the wear and tear from everyday usage inside the restaurants, but still manage to fetch a large sum from enthusiasts. In 2020, one was put up for sale on Yahoo Japan auctions with one of the training cartridges and sold for the equivalent of around $3,200. Fans have attempted to reverse engineer the software to fully access its features, but have found only limited success since it requires a form of authentication to use. 2017 saw the re-release of Rockstar's open-world detective game LA Noire. The publisher went all out to promote its return, even commissioning some custom gaming hardware. These devices were painted gold and black, with designs inspired by the game's 1940s aesthetic. There was one made for each platform the re-release landed on: PC, Xbox One, PS4 and Nintendo Switch. They were all given out as part of a sweepstakes 1 month on from launch in December 2017. Fans could enter via Rockstar's social club to win one of the 4 machines. The winners are believed to have received their prizes in early 2018, and the devices fell off the radar for some time after that. It didn't require a detective to track down the Nintendo Switch, however, as it soon began being traded around collector circles. Console variations acquired it after it emerged on a Facebook trading group in 2019. The item is entirely one of a kind. It features a custom LA Noire Nintendo Switch dock, console, and matching Joy-Con. It also sports the Rockstar logo on the back of it. The site estimated that the set was worth at least $2,000 in 2020. In mid-2005, the Japanese Club Nintendo site launched a region-exclusive giveaway designed to encourage players to spend more on software and hardware during this period. The promotion was called Hot Summer. Players who registered a DS or 2 games during the summer were entered into a prize draw to potentially win one of a number of Club Nintendo exclusives. At the top of the prize list were some highly rare DS consoles, with a number of different custom designs. Printed on the front of them was the Hot Summer namesake and 3D frame art of some of Nintendo's biggest characters, including Mario, Peach, Yoshi, Wario and Bowser. The Wario DS was later replaced with a Donkey Kong variety. 200 were made per character, making for a total of just 1,000 handhelds. The campaign proved popular in Japan and quietly made its way to Europe, albeit in a much more limited fashion, resulting in a series of devices that were even more rare. As opposed to giving them away via Club Nintendo, Nintendo of Europe had only 5 devices made, one of each variety, and privately distributed them to European celebrities. As opposed to Hot Summer, the text was replaced with Special Limited Edition 2005. In the years since this marketing ploy, only one of the limited edition 2005 units have been discovered by collectors, the Donkey Kong variety. It was originally sent to German musician Xavier Naidoo before being recovered by Console Variations. Due to its extreme rarity and spotless condition, the device is regarded as exceedingly valuable. Puzzle and Dragons is a match 3 puzzle game that gained immense popularity in the 2010s, at one point even becoming the highest grossing mobile app of all time. The series eventually made its Nintendo console debut in 2015 through a special collaboration with the Big N. The result was Puzzle and Dragons Super Mario Edition, a crossover blending the mechanics of the burgeoning puzzle game with the iconic characters of Nintendo's flagship franchise. To mark the launch of this Nintendo 3DS exclusive, P&D developer Gung Ho Online Entertainment hosted an international championship to find the world's best players. Between September 2015 and January 2016, a series of tournaments took place across Japan, South Korea, Germany, and the USA. As prizes for the 4 highest ranking players, Nintendo prepared a unique console never seen before or since, a red new 3DS XL with a gold Super Mario Puzzle and Dragons emblem on the front. The golden text read, Puzzle and Dragons International Championship, with the date of the final round, the 31st of January 2016. Underneath, a congratulations message could be found as well. Only 4 of these consoles were ever produced, making it one of the rarest 3DS variants of all time. For the following few years, the handhelds were retained by their respective winners, but 2 of them eventually resurfaced. After the tournament, one of them was sold to a second-hand store for a small fraction of its true value. The admin of Console Variations discovered the device in their possession and purchased it, again, for the low price of $150. The reason for this is that the store vendor had no understanding of its significance and believed it had been damaged by its previous owner, remarking that the device had a smudge on it. In reality, this smudge was actually the signature of Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto. The famous designer had signed 3 of the 4 3DS devices after the tournament, something that only multiplied their value. The 3DS had been well kept in its original packaging, a red and gold box with a map of the international tournament locations on the back. Console Variations estimates that the device with Miyamoto's signature could be worth as much as $10,000, a massive increase over the amount paid for it.
Star Fox Grand Prix was probably the biggest rumor of the entire Switch generation. It's almost hard to believe that was 5 years ago, but we finally cracked the code. We talked to Retro Studios staff, gaming journalists like Jason Schreier who chased the original story, and a few social media influencers who broke the news, so to speak. This game had a whole media frenzy around it, and millions of Nintendo fans were convinced the rumors were true, but what if we told you the whole thing was entirely, utterly fake? But how is that even possible? And who started the hoax? Well, buckle up, because we're about to take you on a wild ride. Now, let's go back to the beginning. In case you need a reminder about all the hype around Star Fox Grand Prix, this was YouTube back in 2018.
But if it does turn out to be accurate, it'll be super intriguing to see if Retro can do to Star Fox what it's done to Metroid and Donkey Kong. That is, revive the franchise.
Star Fox Grand Prix that's supposedly being made by Retro Studios because lots of people seem to think it's true.
We're gonna see a Star Fox Grand Prix announcement tomorrow.
Star Fox Grand Prix.
Star Fox Grand Prix.
Star Fox Grand Prix.
Star Fox Grand Prix.
Star Fox Grand Prix?
Star Fox Grand Prix could get the has-beens or the second-rate characters.
Right.
Cameos.
Not to mention all the news articles, tweets, and podcasts. And we're not dogging on these guys, by the way. They were just reporting on a viral rumor, and in a few cases, quite skeptically. But you get the point. Star Fox Grand Prix was on the tip of every tongue that summer, but an official announcement never came. 5 years passed and some fans are still wondering what happened exactly. Since then, most people subscribe to one of two theories. The first one is that it was Nintendo themselves who started a fake rumor, as a way to sniff out leakers in their midst. There's been a lot of secrets leaking out of Nintendo over the years, and some folks think this was all a ruse to plug it up. The other theory is that some gaming journalists got a sneak peek at Star Fox in Starlink Battle for Atlas and just got confused and thought it was a Star Fox racing game. We spent almost 2 years digging into this story and exploring these theories, so we'll walk you through our investigation. So, what about the popular theory that Nintendo started the rumor themselves? After all, that's what Google says happened. Initially, you might think making up fake games could negatively impact sales. For example, if everyone thought a Star Fox racing game was coming soon, maybe they'd save their money instead of buying something else. In that case, Nintendo would actually lose money, so we spoke to former Retro Studios senior producer Brian Walker. He's also worked for Activision, Embracer Group, and several other publishers. We asked Brian, do companies actually spread fake leaks about their own games?
I have seen it happen at other publishers where they'll let something quote leak unquote, or they'll tag a bit of information as having been delivered to a very short list of people, waiting for that to surface, and then just doing some forensics to narrow down where that came from. I have at other publishers seen that firsthand. Not in Nintendo though.
So fake corporate leaks do happen, but not necessarily at Nintendo. That's definitely not what happened this time though, because we found out who created the title Star Fox Grand Prix. It was the same guy who created this infamous logo. It wasn't anyone at Nintendo, it was the YouTube and Twitch streamer Roger's Base. But this reveal is just the tip of the iceberg. Some of the journalists who covered the Grand Prix rumors told us they suspected the whole thing was a hoax by Roger and one other social media influencer we'll get to in a minute. After all, Roger pulled a similar stunt back in 2009 when he made a Professor Layton Twitter account many believe was officially run by Nintendo. That was a long time ago, so we checked in with Roger to see if he was up to his old tricks, and he admitted that yeah, he made the Grand Prix logo. It was just a simple edit of the official Star Fox Guard logo, photoshopped in about 5 minutes. As for the title, the 1966 film Grand Prix is one of his dad's favorite movies, so it just kinda popped into his head.
Grand Prix!
Roger may have cooked up the name and the logo, but he said he wasn't responsible for the hoax. Innocently, he made a logo mock-up to use in a YouTube thumbnail, nothing out of the ordinary for his channel. Roger never ended up finishing that video, but it was gonna be a rumor that circulated back in 2012, when people were saying Retro was making a Star Fox/Metroid crossover game. History doesn't often repeat itself, but sometimes it rhymes. We'll come back to Roger's hijinks in a minute, but first, let's get Retro on the record about both projects. Again, here's Brian Walker, senior producer at Retro, when that rumor was going around. He called the Star Fox/Metroid crossover clickbait, pure and simple. As for Star Fox Grand Prix,
I wish sometimes that we were working on as many cool things as the fans think we were. to this day, I have people come up and say, yeah, we heard about this, and it's a shame when it's canceled. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. It sounds cool, though. Let's do it. Kid Icarus, Star Fox Racing. I mean, there's not I don't think a Nintendo stable or IP that at some point hadn't been associated with something that Retro was supposedly working on.
Brian left Retro many years ago, so we got into contact with a dev who's still at Retro today. They wanted to remain anonymous, but told us there have been pitches related to that IP, but I have never heard of any racing project like that at Retro. We found one of those pitches, Star Fox Armada, which we covered extensively in a recent video. But as far as Grand Prix or a Metroid crossover, multiple people from Retro say they never existed. Maybe, though, you don't want to take Retro's word for it. Maybe you think they're lying or under NDA. So let's keep digging down to the roots of the rumor. Pretty much all those news articles about Star Fox Grand Prix dropped on the same day, May 14th, 2018. They all cited two sources, a 4chan thread revealing the game's logo, which we've already established was made by Roger's Base, and the other was Reddit leaker Das Vergeben, who claimed Retro was making a Star Fox racing game, which was like Diddy Kong Racing mixed with F-Zero, featuring an adventure mode, boss fights, and a hub world. Journalists thought that Vergeben's prediction was worthy of being their cited source because he'd correctly predicted Smash Ultimate Fighters in the past. His record wasn't spotless though. He said Halo's Master Chief was going to get added, but Kazuya got announced instead. We offered Vergeben opportunities to give his side of the Grand Prix story since early 2022, but he dodged our questions, and soon after, he completely disappeared from the internet. But whether or not he ever had legit insider information about anything's not particularly important. Like most self-proclaimed leakers, sometimes he just piggybacks on other people's rumors, which is exactly what happened with Star Fox Grand Prix. We're talking about Vergeben because he was the cited source for those news articles, but in reality, a lot of those journalists heard the rumor weeks before. You see, when Roger made that fake logo, he showed it to 3 of his friends. One of those friends was a Twitter rumor monger with a bunch of followers. We've been asked to keep his identity a secret so he doesn't get hate brigaded, and some information we were only able to obtain because we promised to keep him anonymous. There's plenty of clout seekers who don't use their real names and share fake leaks on Twitter, and it doesn't really matter which one it was this time. We gotta call him something though, so let's call him Waddle D Knows. We talked to Waddle D and he admitted that after he got the fake logo from Roger, he sent it to IGN. Then IGN published the logo and the rumor. They also shared it on their podcast.
I think we have the logo here. It was actually passed along to us to Star Fox Grand Prix. There you can see it.
Waddle D sent it to some other folks too, and to make his claims more credible, he showed them an Instagram photo of Roger outside Retro HQ, and said Roger got a sneak peek at the game because he's a YouTube star. In reality, Roger had been at a separate event literally down the street in Austin, Texas, and just swung by Retro for a photo op. He didn't get a sneak peek at anything, heck, he didn't even walk inside the building. That was March 2018, not long before Roger made the logo and the rumor went public. Waddle D confessed to sending the logo to IGN, but denied the rest of those details. They were, however, confirmed to us by people he sent stuff to. From there, the rumor was big enough that even if it couldn't be verified, the rumor itself was news. When one outlet covers a rumor, it basically serves as a smokescreen and encourages other outlets to cover it too. Journalists were sending the logo to each other in group chats, rewording each other's articles, and practically every news site under the sun ended up covering it. So why would Waddle D Knows do this? When we talked to him, he said it was just a mistake, and he thought Retro really did give Roger a sneak peek at Star Fox Grand Prix. So he told people about it. His side of the story is basically that he was gullible and made some foolish decisions. The whole thing was just an accident caused by poor judgment. He wasn't entirely forthcoming though, and some of the things he said were probably untrue. Some of the folks he contacted believe it was all intentional and he did it for clout, wanting to establish himself as a known entity and a source, so he'd be the kind of guy IGN seeks out for information. Others told us he wanted to tweet about Star Fox Grand Prix, then have it show up in the news a few days later so he'd look like a legit leaker. He could then say he broke the story before the big news sites. It's impossible to say for certain what was going on in his head, especially since a lot of tweets got deleted. In fact, he was actively deleting tweets while we were talking to him. And without a full confession, we can't 100% confirm his motivations. Based on prior statements and actions though, the motive appears to be the pursuit of internet clout. Twitter followers, likes, retweets, and that warm, fuzzy feeling of being somebody important. All that said, this was 5 years ago, and he isn't a Twitter leaker anymore, so please don't go hate tweeting people you suspect might have been the real Waddle Dee. The purpose of this video is to find the truth behind the Switch generation's biggest rumor, not to punish one guy for just lying on the internet. As for Roger, he made the logo and the title, but we couldn't find any evidence he did anything dishonest. He said he never claimed to get a sneak peek at Grand Prix, and no one we talked to ever heard him make that claim, not even Waddle Dee. Roger was very forthcoming throughout our investigation and said there's no way he'd jeopardize his Nintendo ambassadorship to leak an upcoming game. It's worth noting though, Waddle Dee might not have been the only person deliberately hoaxing. The logo, posted on 4chan and published by several outlets, was slightly altered from what Roger made. The R-wing was cropped off, a TM was added, and the bottom font was different. Another change was the file name text underneath, and the fact that it was photographed. It's kind of a cliche at this point that leaks appear more believable when they're snapped with a phone camera, as if the leaker just barely had time when no one else was looking. Waddle Dee might have made those edits himself, or it might have been someone who got the logo downstream from him. Waddle Dee denied editing the logo, so maybe it was another rumor monger with similar motivations, or it was just 4chan trolls who did it for the lols. Who exactly is responsible for the 4chan logo is a detail we couldn't quite nail down. It's not especially important, but we wanted to address it to leave no stone unturned. Regardless, it was definitely derived from the logo Waddle Dee got from Roger. The similarities, timing, and of course the title, Star Fox Grand Prix, are too much to be just a coincidence. However, as convenient as it'd be to lay all the blame on one man, some blame might need to be shared. We said there were two prevailing theories earlier. Nintendo staged the leak to sniff out leakers, which we already covered, and the others that confused journalists saw Star Fox in Starlink Battle for Atlas and thought it was Star Fox Grand Prix. The second theory arose because the timing made sense. The rumor went around in May 2018, and Star Fox in Starlink was publicly announced 1 month later in June. So maybe some journalists got an early sneak peek and got their wires crossed. We didn't initially believe it though, because how could someone get invited by Ubisoft for a sneak peek at Starlink and come out thinking Retro Studios showed them Grand Prix? It's not like they're scrounging for scoops, spying through windows, so we initially figured a mix-up was unlikely. Especially since Starlink's Racing Mode DLC wasn't released till a year later. But apparently, that actually did happen. A senior journalist at one of the biggest outlets got a closed-doors preview of Starlink, but told other journalists that Retro showed him a Star Fox racing game, or at least that's what those other journos told us. When we questioned the senior writer about it, he said yeah, he saw Starlink, but never claimed he saw Grand Prix. We weren't sure if we could believe him though. Frankly, a lot of people we spoke to have lied to us. That's partly why this video took almost 2 years to make. One person would say a colleague did or said X, then when we went to corroborate, that colleague then denied it. Only one of them could be telling the truth. Some of the folks caught up in this story have every incentive to cover their tracks or downplay their involvement. We don't want to paint with too broad a brush though. Some journalists were very helpful and provided us with leads off the record. This video wouldn't have been possible without their insight, so we're definitely not saying all journos are bad or anything like that. As for media coverage, the situation was best described to us by investigative journalist Jason Schreier. He was one of the guys who covered the rumor the same day as every other outlet on May 14th. To his credit, he later provided a public update saying his one insider source later backpedaled on the game being real, and that a lot of Nintendo rumor mongers talk to each other, so sometimes what appears to journalists as multiple sources might actually be coming from a ring of people sharing information with each other. Based on our investigation, that seems to be exactly what happened here. Speaking to us more recently, Schreier said he suspects his one source heard the rumor from that same ring of gossipers who had all received the same photoshopped fake logo. Star Fox Grand Prix never existed. It was a rumor sparked by one guy on Twitter, proliferated by gaming journalists, YouTubers, and other piggybacking leakers, then gulped down by fans who wanted it to be true. If there's a lesson to be learned, it's that when you see a dozen gaming sites all covering the same story on the same day, they probably didn't have time to independently verify if any of it was actually true. Especially when their sources are Reddit leakers, 4chan threads, and other journalists. Some rumors do turn out to be true, but Star Fox Grand Prix was a hoax. Thankfully, we can finally lay the rumor to rest. As for what Retro was actually working on, that remains a mystery. We've talked to more than a dozen current and former Retro devs. We got design documents and alpha footage for projects that never saw the light of day, like Heroes of Hyrule, Metroid Tactics, Star Fox Armada, and some we haven't even talked about yet. But whatever that cancelled game really was around 2018, well, that remains elusive even to us. Let us know in the comments if you've got a hunch, or if you're a retro dev, hit us up on our Twitter.
Hello and welcome to Did You Know Gaming Extra. In this episode, we're looking away from commercial games and instead taking a gander at some of the more impressive and lesser known tech demos by Nintendo. Most console manufacturers make tech demos during the development of a system to test and demonstrate the variety of new features their consoles boast, be it in polygon count on screen, lighting effects, audio effects, I mean, the list is endless. First up, we'll be taking a look at one very memorable and impressive tech demo that came with the GameCube software development kit, shipped out to developers prior to the console's release. While its title screen greets the player with a cheery "Welcome to GameCube World," the demo is known more colloquially as Peach's Castle. Previously featured in Super Mario 64, the castle is rebuilt as a graphical playground, where the player can visit various rooms that each showcase a different effect. There are two demo modes available, Normal and Auto, with the latter offering a more hands-off experience via an on-rails camera floating through the castle. In the Normal mode, however, the player's space in the world isn't represented by Mario, but a floating red arrow that twists and turns. At one point, the arrow even momentarily transforms into a dolphin before entering the castle, a passing reference to the GameCube's development codename. The loading time before entering any of the castle's 8 rooms is also cleverly masked by an animation of the arrow knocking before entering. Each room of the castle demonstrates how impressive the GameCube's hardware really was. For example, local lighting is demonstrated by a walkway in a dark cave, lit by rotating spotlights of a variety of colors. At the end of the path is a statue of a Goomba with a spinning light above it straight out of an interrogation room. The console's projection texture capabilities are represented by a theater, which appears to be playing a looping advertisement for the GameCube itself. Another room features a twisting staircase which the red arrow bounces down like a coiled spring, all in an aid to show off the console's bump, specular, and shadow mapping. It's no wonder that fans of the Mario franchise who are less interested in the nitty-gritty of game programming have still sought it out to take it for a spin. A similar GameCube tech demo exists in the wild, though paired with an in-game environment completely unattached to any existing Nintendo IP. Known only as Dodger, the tech demo came with concept art of a protagonist bearing a passing resemblance to Capcom's Mega Man. Anyway, like Peach's Castle, the tech demo serves its purpose well, showing off the GameCube's physics simulation, texture decompression, and other updated systems, though it has to be said, without the same degree of complexity. Set in a coliseum with lit braziers at sunset, an optimum environment to show off how well the GameCube deals with shadows and particle effects, Dodger is subjected to a barrage of glowing cubes and spheres launched by the many stone statues guarding the coliseum's perimeter. The player doesn't control Dodger, but can press a button that prompts the statues to begin their assault. Notably, the harder the button press, the quicker the projectiles. Stepping back a few years, the N64 also had some very interesting tech demos. Instead of making one larger demo to show off what the system could do, Nintendo made lots of smaller demos for the N64. This ranged from basic image manipulation like resizing and flipping to image and polygon morphing. Some demos even showed real-time shadows, showed off the console's high-resolution mode, or just had a bunch of N64 controllers fly at the screen. Some tech demos were a bit more substantial, however. One demo was a multiplayer experience loosely based on the game's Snake. Players would eat parts to make their bodies longer, and the player with the longest body at the end of the round would be the winner. Another demo named Mirror House Cornflakes is a simple but fully 3D maze game where the player can collect cornflakes. One of Nintendo's more recent tech demos was with the Wii U, though this actually resulted in a full game being created as well. Unlike earlier tech demos, Nintendo sought to create a demo for the Wii U to show off their new Nintendo Web Framework, a development environment that was based on Apple's Net Framework WebKit. This framework made use of standard web-compatible codebases like HTML or JavaScript, rather than proprietary code, making development easier for those who have a more traditional background in coding. Mario vs. Donkey Kong Wii U was shown during GDC of 2014, giving the audience a sample of the potential behind Nintendo's new framework. The demonstration involved the same mechanics that the Mario vs. Donkey Kong franchise is known for, having the player guide mini Marios to a level's exit by creating pathways out of various platforms, though it's also possible to interact with the level's setting through the gamepad's touchscreen. The first stage of the demo gives an example of some of the more basic features to the codebase, though later stages give a better demonstration of more complex lighting techniques, animation, and larger arenas. The levels shown in the tech demo appear in the final release version of the game called Mario vs. Donkey Kong Tipping Stars, albeit with minor alterations. Even far more limited devices like the Game Boy Color had some interesting tech demos. Evidence suggests the system's promotional demo cartridge, which was shown within brick-and-mortar stores within console kiosks, may have actually been put together by modifying the existing Game Boy title Wario Land 2. In the game's data is Wario Land 2's entire soundtrack and its collection of sound effects. The demo would cycle through a variety of animated scenes to show what the upgraded console could do, particularly with color. Some of these are original creations which wouldn't be found in future releases. By checking the demo's debug menu, which would typically be inaccessible in a store environment, it's possible to find a list of the demos included with the cartridge. The demonstrations are mostly made up of colorized versions of existing Game Boy titles, such as Zelda or Tetris, though some unused demonstrations show the system's capabilities of manipulating imagery, allowing for a fake 3D polygon effect. Why this portion of the demo went unused is not really clear, though it may have been considered misleading, as the console was certainly not capable of practically implementing these sorts of 3D effects, at least at the speed in the demo. The follow-up handheld, Nintendo's much beloved Game Boy Advance, also had its own sampler. This example started with a rotating visual of Yoshi's Island, demonstrating the system's 3D capabilities. Proceeding will let the player run through a simple one-stage adaptation of Yoshi's story, minus some polish, using various manipulation techniques with sprites such as rotation and stretching. As a strange cutaway, after the player loses all of their health, a dark castle is shown with semi-transparent cloud layers moving independently, likely included as a way of showing the high color count of the Game Boy Advance's screen. Initially, this sample was given out without any sound being played, despite audio files being included in the cartridge. Though by the third iteration of the Game Boy Advance's development kit, sound had been re-implemented. And now it's time for this episode's random piece of trivia. Today we'll be taking a look at Jackass the Game. Released in 2007 for a variety of platforms, Jackass the Game was based on the popular MTV series of the same name. What makes this game of particular interest isn't in its unique gameplay or stunning effects, but rather in the subject matter. Being a game based on the activities of a real group of people, it would be expected that everyone involved from the original cast would have stories about its development. However, Steve-O, one of the leads of the show, has almost no recollection of the game's production, as during the game's vocal recordings and motion capture, he was high on drugs and struggling with a lack of sleep. In fact, it was only after being interviewed for a video with YouTube channel 3 Cool Guys that Steve-O saw the game and provided his opinion. He thinks it's awful and a cheap cash grab from the developers. The crew made little in the way of revenue from its creation. Looking over the footage showing the game's development, and knowing of who Steve-O is, this all seems extremely plausible. He is claimed to, unsurprisingly, not be a particular fan of the title, though he does have more involvement with games. Steve-O appears in a Nintendo DS commercial during his time on the Wild Boys show. Sitting in a tree playing the DS, Steve-O has a lion jump up the tree and nibble his hat. In Steve-O's autobiography, where he discussed the filming of this commercial, he revealed that this was never supposed to happen, and the animal was never intended to get close to him. It's unlikely that he was in danger, but the crew who weren't considering this a possibility certainly made him believe his life was coming to an end.
Gamers have a bottomless appetite for news from Japan. They want to find out what the next big games are going to look like, hear some behind-the-scenes stories about their old favorites, and maybe even get a glimpse of their favorite developers' personal lives. There's just one little hang-up. Most of them can't speak a word of Japanese. Google Translate and other computer programs are notoriously horrendous when it comes to translating Japanese. And even if they weren't horrendous, most fans wouldn't even know where to look for the information they want to read about. Japanese magazines, books, websites, newspapers, it's simply not practical. So fans are left with no choice but to put their trust in games journalists, Reddit users, and various other internet strangers to find and translate all the Japanese gaming news that's fit to print. But sometimes these translations are actually mistranslations that spread misinformation and create controversy. So, in today's video, we're going to look at 4 mistranslation controversies heard around the world and find out what the developers actually said. First on our list is Junichi Masuda, the Pokemon series director who's ruffled quite a few feathers throughout his career. From the Azure Flute controversy to the egg-hatching debacle and the Bayleaf backlash, the man's received his fair share of criticism over the years. In fact, we could probably fill an entire video with nothing but Masuda controversies, but we'll save that for another day. In the quote we're highlighting in this video, he didn't actually say what news sites reported. In July 2018, Masuda sat down for an interview with Japanese magazine Famitsu to discuss a wide range of topics about the upcoming release of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Soon after, a popular fan site called Centro Pokemon published an article translating parts of the interview into Spanish, which said Masuda was removing wild battles from the game because, quote, some players find it difficult to catch Pokemon with the traditional mechanics of the main series, so he switched to the Pokemon Go style to make catching more accessible. A few hours later, a fan translated and summarized the Spanish article into English and posted it on the Resetera forums, where fans were horrified that Masuda had such a low estimation of his own fans' intelligence. Word quickly spread to Twitter, and that's when people really started to get upset. Outlets like My Nintendo News immediately picked up on the story, and before the day was over, an angry mob of Pokemon fans were outraged that Masuda was cutting wild battles in order to appease small children who were incapable of grasping the series' most basic mechanics. However, that's not what Masuda actually said in the interview. The next day, Nintendo Everything posted an accurate translation of the quote. Masuda says he thought of the previous system as similar to fishing, while the new system was more like catching bugs with a net. Wild battles were getting cut, but it wasn't because he thought his fans were idiots. It was really more about trying something new and trying to build a bridge between longtime fans and all the new fans drawn in by Pokemon Go. Some people still didn't like his decision, but at least they didn't feel insulted about why the decision was made in the first place. A few websites that amplified the mistranslation later updated their articles with the corrected language, but a lot of fans never heard about those updates. As the old saying goes, a lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. In this case, no one lied intentionally. It was really just a case of poor fact-checking, but regardless, much of the damage was already done. Next up, we've got Masahiro Sakurai, the esteemed creator of the Super Smash Bros. Franchise. For context, it's also important to note that Sakurai also created the Kirby series in his late teenage years. In November 2018, more than 14 million fans tuned in to watch the trailer for Smash Ultimate's new World of Light campaign. They watched on as Gallium vaporized fan favorites like Samus, Link, Bowser, not even Pikachu was spared. At the end of the trailer, only one character managed to survive, and of course, it was Kirby. Out of all 74 characters, it just so happened to be a tiny pink puffball who was going to turn the tides and save the world from Gallium's wrath. Fans accused Sakurai of being biased in favor of his own creation, and those accusations came to a crescendo a few weeks later when Sakurai addressed the situation in his bi-weekly Famitsu column. Just a few months earlier, Nintendo Everything rode in to save the day on that Masuda quote, but the situation played out a little differently this time. They published a summarized translation of Sakurai's column that read in part, quote, "Regarding Kirby, Sakurai admitted that he's a bit biased as he created the IP, and fans suspicious on that front are correct." The story was essentially copy-pasted by Newsweek later that day, and the quote seeped into YouTube videos, Reddit posts, and Twitter threads all across the internet, with some fans expressing annoyance and in some cases outrage over Sakurai's blatant bias. But that's actually the opposite of what Sakurai said. The next day, Smash Bros. Fan site Source Gaming published a full word-for-word translation that showed Sakurai wasn't admitting bias. He was predicting that's what some fans were going to assume, while also denying bias was the reason Kirby survived the massacre. Here's the full text with the keywords being, "So why did I choose Kirby? It must be because you created the Kirby series. I thought you might say that. But from a game design perspective and based on process of elimination, Kirby was the obvious choice. Only a vehicle that could defy the laws of physics would actually work." He goes on to later explain that Bayonetta or Palutena could have also conceivably escaped, but World of Light only needs to start with one character. Kirby has a simpler moveset that's easier for beginners, so for the sake of game design, Kirby as the sole survivor objectively made the most sense. Now, while some outlets eventually covered the full translation, a lot of the earlier articles based on the mistranslation were never corrected. Kirby undoubtedly has a special place in Sakurai's heart, but he made a pretty good case for his starring role in the World of Light. So it's probably not entirely fair to say his decision was motivated by personal bias. You guys remember that time Sega said Nintendo's just for little kids? In our final story, we're going to talk about Toshihiro Nagoshi, the chief creative officer of Sega as well as the producer of the Yakuza series. To celebrate the company's 60th anniversary in 2020, Sega Europe conducted an interview with Nagoshi and posted it on their YouTube channel with English subtitles. About 12 minutes into the half-hour video, Nagoshi appears to throw some shade at Sega's old rival Nintendo, saying, quote, "I think even now the Nintendo platform is still a game console that is played by a wide range of age groups. But basically, I think it's hardware for kids and teens." Now, only a few thousand people watched the video, but the quote went viral after a Yakuza fan site called Tojo Dojo went on Twitter and shortened the quote to, "Nintendo hardware is for kids and teens." Sega fans and Nintendo haters memed on it pretty hard, and more than a few Nintendo fans got salty and returned fire with some shade of their own. Nintendo news sites called wind of the drama and ran the shortened quote as headlines, plugging their articles back onto Twitter and adding more fuel to the flames. And yeah, by now you probably already know what happened next. YouTubers reacted, Redditors talked trash, and survivors of the great Sega vs. Nintendo console war picked up their rusty old weapons and jumped back into battle. This time, it wasn't a fan-run news site, it was Sega themselves guilty of poor translation. The next day, Gaijin Hunter had to go on Twitter and try to cool things down again, pointing out that the full quote wasn't as hostile as the shortened version, and that a more accurate translation should have read, "Nintendo's platform has and continues to be played by a wide range of age groups, but I think in general their hardware is strong when it comes to kids and teens." So yeah, some folks on Twitter still considered it an insult, but Gaijin assured them there was nothing in the original Japanese that suggested Nagoshi was being hostile or condescending whatsoever. And besides, the full clip shows that Nagoshi was actually talking about Super Monkey Ball, the first Sega game ever released on Nintendo console, which Nagoshi himself created 2 decades earlier. The fact that he's a Yakuza guy and those games weren't ported to the Switch had absolutely nothing to do with it. So yeah, Sega's non-ideal translation and the way it was taken out of context for clickbait made it sound like he was dismissing Nintendo consoles as just for kids, when all he'd really said was people of all ages love Nintendo and they've been especially successful with the younger generation. A few news sites reported the correct translation, but a lot of console war combatants never heard the real story. And rumor has it that some of them are still out there fighting even to this day. Now, before we wrap things up, we just want to say that most of the news sites we talked about in this video act in good faith and report the news responsibly every single day. Nobody's perfect. We've made mistakes. Mainstream news makes mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. But you know how it goes. Sometimes mistakes slip through the cracks and take on a life of their own. At the risk of sounding presumptuous, here's some advice for journalists and viewers alike. Next time you see the internet catch fire over an interview translation, take a moment to consider the source before deciding whether to join in or not.
Did you know there was almost a Metroid movie? The franchise was at its peak of popularity and acclaim after the launch of Metroid Prime in early 2003, and Retro Studios was hard at work making a sequel. Nintendo was developing Zero Mission and Metroid Prime Hunters, and they'd even contracted out a pinball game spin-off. The iron was piping hot, so Nintendo decided to go all out, and decided to make a Metroid movie too. They optioned out film rights to producers Warren Zide and Craig Perry, best known for the Final Destination movies and American Pie. The duo released a basic plot outline in January 2003, which read, "The story is set in a once peaceful galaxy, which has its prosperity shattered by a startling discovery. On a routine mapping expedition of a planet, a survey crew discovers a new airborne life form, the Metroid. Able to engulf other living beings, feed on their energy, and multiply in great numbers, they prove a terrifying menace. Female bounty hunter Samus Aran is commissioned by the Galactic Federation to eliminate the pests, but she soon discovers that pirates with a stolen Metroid specimen are plotting to breed and build an unstoppable army." Zide and Perry were actively looking for writers, actors, and a director, but their plans ultimately went nowhere, and their rights expired in 2004. That's when the rights got snapped up by John Woo, a much more accomplished producer, with greater enthusiasm for the project. Woo's penchant for Mexican standoffs, slow motion, and stylized action scenes known as gun fu made him one of Hong Kong's most influential filmmakers, and a huge inspiration for Hollywood movies like The Matrix, as well as anime like Cowboy Bebop. According to Foxhoven, a producer who worked alongside Woo, "We believed there was a great opportunity for John Woo to bring his style of action into a Metroid film." Nintendo was quite supportive of the idea, as they were all fans of John's previous films. Nintendo was definitely discouraged by the Super Mario Bros. Movie, but felt with John they would be in better hands. When the news broke, Foxhoven announced that they were looking to make Metroid into a big budget film, and not a quick cash grab. Samus's adventure would be fairly faithful to the games, and see her battling series staples like Mother Brain and the titular Metroids. John Woo was apparently pretty excited, telling The Hollywood Reporter, "This type of story has a proven track record of success with film audiences. We're very fortunate that there is such an extensive amount of material to draw upon for the film due to there being so many Metroid games over the years." Early script proposals focused on Samus's origin story, explaining who she was and what she did before she became the bounty hunter we know today. In an IGN interview, Foxhoven explained Samus was going to be exceptionally talented, but also very flawed, and looking for redemption. They wanted Samus to struggle, be humbled, and ultimately find it within herself to beat the odds, rather than come out the gate as some overpowered superhero. Woo's team hired several writers to provide guidance, most notably David Greenwald, who had experience writing strong female leads from his time on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. As for who'd play the starring role, it doesn't appear Woo ever nailed down a specific actress, but Retro Studios president Michael Kelbaugh knew just the woman for the job. In late 2004, Electronic Gaming Monthly asked Kelbaugh who should play Samus in the upcoming Woo movie, and he said, "We addressed this question a lot. The sex of Samus is irrelevant in the video games, and we've always liked that because it never played a role in the series. It's more of a surprise than anything else. Demi Moore kind of personifies that. It doesn't matter what's underneath the helmet way of thinking. She has always been my preference to play Samus." Presumably, he'd come to the conclusion after watching A Few Good Men, G.I. Jane, and other Demi Moore movies, where she played roles typically reserved for men, but was also capable of employing traditional feminine charms when a script called for it. In early 2004, John Woo announced the film was planned to hit theaters around Christmas 2005, so by the time summer of 2004 rolled around, rumors were swirling that the movie was on schedule and production had begun. but Nintendo's Yoshio Sakamoto dispelled those rumors in Japanese gaming magazine Nintendo Dream, saying that there hadn't actually been any progress, explaining, "There were some misleading reports before E3 that Metroid's production was confirmed. But to be accurate, it's that the company that John Woo works for has gained the rights to negotiate with Nintendo of America to make Metroid into a movie. Metroid's production hasn't officially been decided yet, and there's no release plans for it. And that's the devil in the details. The contract between Nintendo and John Woo, which was never made public, didn't give Woo the authority to make the movie however he wanted. It only gave him rights to make a movie which Nintendo approved of. The biggest impediment was Samus didn't have much of an established backstory to draw from, and a movie adaptation required much more fleshing out of both character and the universe. It seems there just wasn't enough material in the games to draw from, as Woo initially thought. His team spent 3 years just in the pre-production stages, trying to build a cohesive world and craft a story that would satisfy the Metroid fanbase and also appeal to the moviegoers who had been meeting Samus for the first time. And more importantly, the story had to gain Nintendo's approval. But according to Foxhoven, things started to go south when we tried to dig into the character a bit more. As you know, any film needs a deeper story arc than what's told in the game, where we learned about the characters and their world. What are they doing when they're not fighting? What is their daily existence and relationships? What are Samus's aspirations, history, and fears? Nintendo appreciated the questions but had never thought about them before, and ultimately didn't have a lot of answers. In the end, they felt uncomfortable with our team being the ones to propose those answers. Foxhoven went on to say they made it as far as treatment, which is the stage between the basic outline and the script's first draft. A treatment's usually between 10 and 40 pages, and details the narrative, setting, characters, themes, and particular scenes in order to secure authorization to move forward and write the full script. But after years of getting to that point, Woo's team realized they just couldn't come up with a satisfactory story that Nintendo would agree to. So, they were forced to abandon the project in 2007. Apparently, Nintendo wanted to tell Samus's story all on their own, so they started development on Metroid Other M later that same year. But when Other M released in 2010, the Metroid fanbase largely rejected that story. A few weeks later, Games Radar asked Other M's producer and director, Yoshio Sakamoto, if there was any hope a Metroid movie could still get made someday. He told them, specifically talking about storytelling of Other M and the visual quality of computer graphics, "I think we have used quite luxurious resources to create these movie sequences, and I think these scenes are worthy of the movie label. However, if you ask me if I want Samus's story to be told in cinemas, I really don't think so." However, if Mr. Ryuji Kitaura, the director of the CG cutscenes in Other M, wants to make a Metroid movie, and if the concept and methodologies he presents are agreeable with me, then I might be okay with the idea, but only if it's made by him. Fans haven't exactly been clamoring for Nintendo to make a full-length movie in the style of Other M, but there have been some interesting ideas from third parties in the decade since. Like in 2017, when the producer of the Netflix Castlevania series, Adi Shankar, said he'd like to make a quote-unquote dark Metroid series, in the same anime style as Castlevania. Unfortunately though, Sakamoto publicly expressed a lack of enthusiasm for Shankar's proposal. In 2018, the director of the upcoming Metal Gear movie, Jordan Vogt-Roberts, told IGN he wanted to make a Metroid film in an isolationist style, saying, "It legitimately would be Samus alone. It would be a little bit of her talking to herself. As soon as they introduce other talking characters in those games, to me, it loses everything. You put her alone, and it's almost got more to do with the silence of a movie, like Drive, like the quietness, and having it be a real intense mood piece, but mixed with sci-fi. But Nintendo will never let me. It's too crazy." Apparently, it wasn't too crazy though, because Metroid Prime's senior designer, Mike Wicken, publicly supported the idea, even if Nintendo proper never acknowledged it. A few months later, Captain Marvel actress Brie Larson dressed as Zero Suit Samus for Halloween, and repeatedly expressed a desire to play Samus on the silver screen. And the following year, Metroid manga writer Itsuki Kouji said he also supported a live-action film based on the series.
Did you know? Though Donkey Kong Country Returns was in development in 2008, talks for the game actually began much earlier. In April 2004, Retro Studios brought up the idea of working on a Donkey Kong game after finishing Metroid Prime 2, but the idea was shot down. Instead, having them follow up with a third Prime game, producer Kensuke Tanabe said Nintendo relied on Retro Studios to make games that Japanese studios couldn't. Later, in April 2008, Nintendo veteran Shigeru Miyamoto was in talks with Tanabe about about making a new Donkey Kong Country. He asked about finding a developer suited for the job, and Tanabe recalled Retro's president Michael Kelbaugh. Kelbaugh had previously worked on the DKC series with Rare and said he'd love to work on it again. Tanabe himself had also worked on DKC's Japanese localization. At this time, several core Retro staff had left the company, leaving them open for new projects. Had those personnel not left to pursue other interests, the opportunity to work on Donkey Kong might not have gone to Retro. In an edition of Iwata Asks, former Nintendo president Satoru Iwata referred to this set of circumstances as fate. As a result of this, Returns went under the codename F8 during development, a name coined by Kelbaugh. Retro didn't feel at all skeptical about going from Metroid to Donkey Kong, and the brighter atmosphere of the DK series reflected their outlook on the project. Occasionally they'd make art that was more Metroid than DK, but their mantra throughout was to keep things fun and whimsical. The team played through the country and land games to get a good grasp on the gameplay, as well as Banjo-Kazooie for good measure. Wario Land on Virtual Boy was also a huge inspiration, as it featured platforming that switched between the foreground and background, much like Returns does. Miyamoto was heavily involved in Returns creation, giving suggestions for gameplay ideas and animation details. Retro affectionately referred to him as Master Yoda, and he had told them that Donkey Kong was his baby and that they better get it right. Miyamoto came up with the hand slap move for the original DKC and made a subtle change to it for Returns. Initially, Retro made a simple animation for the move, and he suggested it have more of a 1-2 rhythm, and they were surprised as to how that subtle suggestion made the move feel so much better to perform. The game's blow mechanic also came from Miyamoto after playing an early demo. For 10 minutes, he ran back and forth with DK, seeing how he moved, and took notice of the final frames of animation where he'd turn and kick up dust. Miyamoto said it looked like DK was exhaling, then suggested he should blow on things. It was a new way to interact with the environment, and the suggestion confused the team at first. During the 2011 Game Developers Conference, director Brian Walker had this to say: "When we got back to Retro and pitched this to the team, the lights didn't instantly come on. The general response was, 'What the hell?' But after we experimented with it, we saw how it turned out to be a fun feature, and it was really consistent with the fun, whimsical tone of the game." Miyamoto wanted Retro to focus on a single-player experience first and foremost, but Tanabe wanted Returns to have good multiplayer, fully realizing what couldn't be done in the original games, 2 players at the same time. However, a second target would increase the game's character animation count and add an extra layer to the game's camera system and level geometry. Multiplayer also acted as a way to separate Returns from the previous DK game, Donkey Kong Jungle Beat. Interestingly, where the original Jungle Beat distanced itself from the country games, the Wii version of Jungle Beat featured more elements from country. This included barrel cannons and even DK's ducking animation from the original DKC. Jungle Beat may have inspired the beatdowns at the end of a boss fight in Returns, and level end jingles from Jungle Beat play at the end of a Returns level. Development on Tropical Freeze started shortly after Returns was released. Retro initially denied any hints of a sequel, but they still had unfinished business with the series. The Wii U hardware would allow them to do things that weren't possible in Returns, such as have a dynamic 3D camera. It would also allow the Kong's detailed fur, which was in fact requested by Iwata. That said, there were just as many ideas that didn't make it into Tropical Freeze, with Tanabe saying he would have liked to experiment with the series' animal buddies. Another idea the team wanted to see was bringing back series composer David Wise. For Returns, Miyamoto didn't want the music to be changed, so the soundtrack was mainly comprised of remixes from the original country. Wise was contacted by Kelbaugh for Returns' score, but he was unavailable at the time, so the job was handed to Kenji Yamamoto. Shortly after Returns' launch, Kelbaugh privately met with Wise at the Game Developers Conference and asked if he'd be available for a future project with an old friend. Wise immediately agreed and got to work with Yamamoto on Tropical Freeze's score. For the Grassland Groove track, some of the vocals were supplied by Nintendo staff who were regulars in choirs. Yamamoto recruited them and had them sing the track's choir segments, with Wise saying it gave the song a unique charm. Wise has also said that the Seashore War track was originally made for the Savannah levels, and that it's his personal favorite track he's ever composed, though it's a track different from what's heard in the final game. To coincide with the UK release of Returns, the game was promoted with UK retailers Game and GameStation, where the first 20 customers could get a copy of the title in exchange for a bunch of bananas at select stores. This isn't the only bit of fun that was had with the game. Returns' Foggy Fumes level has several Nintendo Easter eggs. A silhouette of Crocomyre's skull from Super Metroid can be seen in the background, and the character Mr. Game & Watch makes a cameo appearance later on. Early in the level is a silhouette of the 25-meter stage from the Donkey Kong arcade game. Similarly, Tropical Freeze has a reference to Donkey Kong 3 in the Fruity Factory level, featuring a replica of the game's first stage in the background. Stanley the Bugman's bug sprayer also appears in the foreground. The level Busted Bayou even features Samus's gunship ensnared in the trees. The secret level themes in both games also incorporate music from Donkey Kong Jr. Donkey Kong's idle animation of him playing a Nintendo handheld has been updated with each of Retro's games, starting with a DS Lite in Returns and upgrading to a 3DS XL in the Wii U version of Tropical Freeze. The Nintendo Switch port fittingly has him play the Switch in handheld mode. The animation may have been inspired by an event at the San Francisco Zoo, where a child dropped their DS in the Guerrilla pen and the gorillas started to play with the console. The event took place a few months before Return's launch, and Retro Studios took note of the event on their site. The plot to Tropical Freeze is also similar to a German Donkey Kong comic called Banana Day 24, issued in a 1996 Club Nintendo magazine. In it, DK, Diddy, Dixie, and Cranky have to save their home from being frozen over, though the similarities between the comic and game end there. Tropical Freeze on Switch interestingly makes a reference to obscure DK media, where Tox the Parrot will tell Funky Kong to give the Snowmads the old Banana Slammer, referencing Donkey Kong's catchphrase from the Donkey Kong Country animated series.